All right, let's get this show on the road. Hi, everyone. Welcome
All
to
right.
the Homespun Yak. Today we've got a guest, again, for what, the second time? Third time?
Third time.
Third time. Bennie Berman. How's it going, Benny?
Pretty good. How y'all doing?
Hanging in there. Hoping third time's a charm.
Yeah.
Gonna help us out.
Well, I like this platform now. This definitely adds a different kind of angle to what y'all are doing. So this is exciting.
Yeah, it definitely does. I'm really excited about what it can provide, like video-wise, just because we can actually throw up stuff on screen. I was talking to Kyle about this before, but this being the new Joe Rogan podcast studio, I was telling Kyle that from the moment that I saw it, I absolutely hated it. It is the worst possible design that he could have come up with. And Kyle mentioned that he thinks he might have been high out of his mind when he came up with it. It's completely red and he looks like he's in a tube, but just like in a can. And that's the best he could come up with. It just absolutely looks ridiculous.
Yeah, it doesn't even look. I don't know. The quality doesn't look great. I mean, I get that he's trying to be like in a spaceship, but you could have done a much cooler, like darker vibe. Like, I don't know, just like it's not as intense. Like you're in the middle of, you're like inside of Satan's.
I know exactly where you're going with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you mean to tell me you couldn't
fits,
find
though.
anybody at Disney?
It totally
I
fits,
know.
though. Oh my god, that's good. Yeah, it definitely does look like that. Well, anyways, we don't have a studio quite that elaborate, but hopefully with this new system, we'll be able to do some cool stuff. Not that we have our own young Jamie.
No, that'd be nice. But yeah, I mean, speaking of Joe Rogan, I think Nick, you texted me today, and Benny, I'm sure you've seen this, that one of his most recent episodes was with Tim Kennedy, who I'm sure
Yeah.
you're familiar with.
Indeed.
And they were talking about, the debate format, the candidates they do every show. And I guess he went on Twitter afterwards and was like, I want Joe Rogan to host the debate 4 hours on his podcast between Trump and Biden. And he's like, who's in? And Trump goes, I'm in.
I'll be there.
I'm in.
Let me know.
That's all he said.
Jeez. That's brilliant.
So, yeah, I mean, having said that, it went from like, a joke, but at the same time, I think I would trust Joe Rogan as much as any other, talking head, suit dummy moderator that has been there before, to push back and ask questions that might be inflammatory for both sides.
Well, he's not going to beat around the bush, and you kind of already know his biases. He's made that pretty clear over the years on his show, and that's completely fair. Whereas you have moderators from national media outlets that pretend to be biased, but you're just like, dude, we see right through it. Don't drop the act. Just come out and just lean your way and just make it that. Stop trying to pretend.
Yeah. I mean, all these major media outlets, I think people are moving slowly away from it because they can tell that it's just like completely biased, and they're just paid to be just puppets for whatever side of the political spectrum that the corporation wants them to be in. So whatever you're leaning towards, if you go to NBC, if you're left leaning, you're going to hear all the things you want to hear. Whereas Joe Rogan, I mean, he doesn't have to play by anybody's rules, which is great. And he definitely does have some biases that he's, not ashamed to say, but he's not also ashamed to like look at all different sides and like, admit when he's wrong too, and admit when he's doesn't know something. So I think that's the type of person you would want just in any conversation, but especially moderating a debate like that. So I mean, I would think it would be a better, a more realistic display of like true questions that people want to know instead of just pandering and just giving, Scarecrow Biden a layup or a softball or, helping Trump to dance around questions, that he always does. So it's like,
Yeah.
it'd be interesting. I'm all in. Like Trump, I'm in.
I would totally be in too. But could you imagine Joe asking Joe about his cognitive decline? You know how cringy that would be? It's so bad.
It would be bad.
Yeah,
That
it
would be
really
bad.
would.
I'm sure he would, though.
And then Trump doubling down on it.
Oh yeah,
Oh man,
I
that'd be
could see
so
him
bad.
being like, "Now, what drugs are you guys on right now? Like, what drugs are keeping you like alert and alive?"
Yeah, exactly.
Quite frankly,
Did Corn Pop sell you those?
Have you guys tried DMT?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He would definitely ask about marijuana now that he's in Texas and it's not legal there. So he'd be
Yeah.
like, "What's up with the drug war?" Which is a fair question.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, it's definitely a good question. It'd be really interesting. It'd be a lot more down to earth, kind of like when he had Andrew Yang on and Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie Sanders on. It seemed like they kind of loosened up. I mean, Bernie's kind of like a machine. He just keeps spitting out the same thing for decade after
Yeah.
decade. But it did feel like with like Tulsi and Andrew Yang that it was more of a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, old, what's his name? Bernie. Bit of a cuckold for the Democrats, would you say?
It does feel
I
that way.
mean, it's bad.
Benny, what's your take there?
I mean, you're talking about a guy that's been, I mean, deuced on twice by the DNC and having strong popularity within the young voters and certain minority groups, and they're just like, no, step aside. We know better than you. We're gonna
It's
take
true
it from here.
progressive ideology as opposed to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, where it's just, I don't know, it's all talk, but it's really the meat of it is not that progressive or liberal. It's more just like
No, I mean,
appeasing the middle ground.
Yeah, I
The
mean, like
safe
if you
play.
looked at the policies, yeah, definitely a safe play. If you look at the policies between Trump and Biden, I mean, like where are you seeing a deviation? Like you're seeing people that are going to continue to increase the national debt and spend incredible amounts, do basically whatever. They're not gonna solve any kind of like major crisis for the rest of the presidency. I mean, maybe one of them is in office when you then have like a COVID vaccine come out that's really efficient, but he didn't solve it. It's not like we're gonna balance the budget. We're gonna stop like policing the world or whatever you want to say, like any of these kind of big topics. We're gonna end police brutality and like do it. These guys are not going to be the ones to take the reins on those and get that job done. So
No.
whether it's taxation, like one's going to increase taxes on 1%, like one group, and the other one's going to do it on the other, and still it's going to trickle down to the middle class and still screw them. So,
Mhm.
where are you really getting ahead with
Yeah.
either of those two options?
You're not.
Yeah, I
especially,
keep seeing ads. Go ahead, Nick.
I was just gonna say, especially for minorities, you're definitely not getting ahead with any of those.
No, you're talking about one guy that spent most of the '90s wearing a mullet and then throwing people in jail by passing legislation. I mean, he passed the hard crime bills to get people locked up, and then you have someone like Kamala Harris. It's like, come on, change the laws, keep them coming. We'll just throw them in here. We need firefighters in
Yeah.
California. Come on, keep it going.
Yeah, free labor.
Yeah, free labor.
Yeah, I keep seeing ads like on YouTube. I guess it's just, I don't know how YouTube's algorithm does it, but I am seeing both ads for Joe and Trump more and more now as we get closer to the election. And the past few ads I've seen for Joe Biden have been like, Joe is going to make education free for everyone. Really?
Huh.
But it like that just came out of nowhere. And it's like, you're really just going to put that in writing? You're just going to go ahead and say that you're going to make education free? Like, I mean, I can see a lot of people seeing that and being like, I'm voting for Joe now. And then he gets in office and it's like, not that shit is not going to pan out. Like, I can't see that happening. I've never even heard him say that. And now they're just like, he'll probably make education free. Like just throwing out these last ditch efforts to be like, really grab people in. And I just don't see how that's a realistic thing. I mean, I haven't heard him talk about that at all. I don't even know how you would do that or his plan, but I just thought that was super fascinating that they're now just boldly saying that.
Yeah, that does
Free
seem
education, free healthcare.
It does feel like that's the way that the political sphere is going at this point. You don't have to actually back anything with any sort of plan or anything like that. Just say something and just put it out there and hope that people, and a lot of people will totally go for it. You know, I feel like the percentage of people that actually ask questions and try and figure out who's the actual best candidate are in the dramatic minority, as opposed to the people that just go with their gut feeling. Free education? All right, I'm in.
Yeah.
You know, real simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Defunding the police. All right, I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff that goes on.
That'll work out. It's like no one has any kind of thought of like what the next month looks like after that. I mean, you're talking about the people that have the same attention span as, you know, goldfish that basically live in, you know, the Twitter sphere or even TikTok land. You know, like you need that instant gratification, and you hear that soundbite like, "Oh, free education, boom, done." But you know, there's probably this small asterisk right next to it. It's like you need to take a test, and then we might pay for it, but then you don't have to pay for anything. You know, like in Europe, like at least you have to get good grades, pass hard, rigorous tests. And then a lot of socialized education systems are like, yeah, you've earned this. We'll pay for it. But they, like the Democratic politicians and progressives seem to leave that part out. And they just assume that you can have that logic with the idea of the American dream that you can be anything. You can't have everybody go into that then. Like then you're just hoping that everybody makes enough money that you can just kind of like pay back the debt, which we already see is not the case because we're over $1 trillion in student loan debt in the country. Like you just don't crush that with giving someone at best a $45,000 a year job straight out of college. Like you're just never going to earn that. Even, you know, push it out over 20 years. Like you're taking out more of the system than what you're putting in on a yearly basis. So you're never going to catch up to that. You're just always going to be burning.
Didn't they have several candidates that were also saying that they wanted to just get rid of student loan debt?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just $1 trillion.
Like, even that,
I'm sure the government can
it's just $1 trillion. At the same time, I mean, the way that the money has been inflated so much, it's like, what does that actually pan out to be? Is that actually like, you know, $150 billion that not that that's a small amount of money, but comparatively that's a lot less. But you know, it's like, we'll just get rid of it. We'll just clear your debt. And it's almost like what's going on with like the you know, payroll loans that the government's giving out, that they're like, these are loans, but you don't have to pay it back. It's like, so it's a gift for a company.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make sense. It's like, how do you get that money back?
Yeah. I mean, it's like the government created the problem and then they're trying to cover the problem up. But the people who are suffering yet again are the people that pay taxes. Now it's our job to cover up this Band-Aid that you created in the first place. And it's just like, like, I don't know. There's so many different sides to student loans that it's just so complicated to look into, like clearing it all away, how they're even accumulated in the first place. Like, I don't know. You can get into like, is college way too expensive on average?
Oh,
Like,
for sure. That's
and then your interest on your student loans just piles up more and more and more. And it's just
definitely.
like, yeah, I don't know. And it just follows you after you are gone from this earth as well.
Yeah, I
So,
remember in at ECU when they kept obviously increasing the tuition rate over time, or just the overall amount of money, and I mean they're doing like projects on campus to like make the campus look nicer, and I remember thinking, I mean, even as a dumb shit 20-year-old, I was thinking like this is completely unnecessary. The fact that the walkways were pristine, everything like that, but they decided we're going to tear everything up and redesign everything. And you're thinking like,
yeah.
all that's why my tuition's increasing. I mean, this must have been millions and millions of
Yeah.
dollars that they had to invest to actually make something like this happen. So, increasing tuition fees, I absolutely think that no doubt universities just are like, yeah, we kind of want this, or we need to pay our president $3 million or whatever it is,
Yeah.
for to
Our
run the
athletic
university.
director.
Exactly, like stuff like that, just completely ridiculous. It's so much of a business, just like the NCAA is, when it comes to sports. So I completely agree. Matter of fact, with the tuition, like getting rid of debt when it comes to tuition, I've got a friend who paid off his tuition debt, and he's incredibly proud of that. So when he found out that Bernie and definitely one other candidate was also saying that they were just going to get rid of debt that's related to school debt, I mean, he was livid. He was like, I hope to. I mean, he's definitely a lot more liberal than anything, but just that one thing alone made him so angry because he had spent as much possible time and investment into his work and saved up money so that he could pour it into paying off this student loan debt. But like you were saying, Benny, like if you're not making that much money and you're saving as much money as possible trying to do the responsible thing, and then the government comes in, swoops in, gets rid of everybody else's tuition debt that they had, and you've already paid off half of it, or you've already paid off all of it. I mean, how vengeful would you feel? Like I would feel terrible in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just paid mine off early this year. And I don't know. Like, on one hand, like, I can picture myself like 5 years ago being like, I wish, everyone would be forgiven of their student loan
Yeah,
debt. And
yeah,
now that I've paid it off, I'm like, actually, nah, yeah, I want you to pay it off too, bitch.
yeah, right.
So, I mean, yeah, it's definitely a two-sided coin. Like, should I have paid, was it worth money? No, probably not. But, you have stories of people whose student loan debts are astronomically higher than mine, wherever at any point.
Yeah,
So it's all relative when you're looking at different stories from different people in different parts of the country. But yeah, it's definitely, I think we can agree, it's a broken system, the education system of this country. It's not great, especially now, when you can't actually go to school in person for most part. It's like, why would I spend so much money for online classes when, like, the quality is much lower than if you're
Yeah.
actually there and in person, and like feel like you can ask a one-on-one question and get more time with the teacher, or just like be there in person has so much more impact, I guess. I don't know. I just couldn't justify spending the same amount as if it was a normal school year, which I know all the schools are charging. Like, it's fine, just keep paying us. Like, we're online. What's wrong? Like,
yeah,
oh, we're 18 and we're trying to go out of the house for the first time in our lives, and like spend time with people and like have our own free time. And do all these things, dance, sing, play video games.
Oh, you jolly
Relate-
18-year-olds.
Maybe hold a hand with a young lady or a young man. You never know.
Maybe both.
Without having to keep maybe both. Hey, maybe both. You never know. Keep it. You don't have to open either.
Yeah. It's true, though.
Yeah.
But then the schools
Shut
are
that
like,
door.
we're just going to maintain our prices. But it's totally worth it. Trust us.
Yeah, it's great. We remodeled everything. I mean, you won't be here, but we'll send you pictures.
We'll send you for the cheap price of $7,000.
Here's a picture of your room if you were living here.
Yeah, if you were here, bitch.
Redecorate it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's gone wackadoo. Speaking of wackadoo, Benny, you have a crazy article about a show that is now on Netflix here in the U.S., or is it just over in Europe so far?
No, it
Is
came
it a
out this
show or a
past
movie?
week. It's a movie. So it basically, I think the main thing is this African girl or a French girl of African descent who is Muslim, if I'm not mistaken, basically finds this group of girls and they're all doing dancing and twerking. And basically she tries to jump into this, join this like dance team. And, you know, her family's against it because they're Muslim and conservative. And this is like her kind of freeing herself of those conservative family bonds and finding herself. However, they fail to mention that it's 11-year-olds twerking and then learning how to twerk. And I think to the actual
In French, it's
over the
called
weekend,
le
I sent
twerking.
le twerking and millionaires. Um, and honestly, this thing won a award at Sundance. I think
An Academy Award, you say?
Sundance, whatever that is, whatever those awards are.
That's still a very reputable and prestigious film ceremony.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, people are like, "No, this is good. We don't care. This isn't like pedophilia. This isn't doing anything weird." And it's like, you showing 11-year-old girls dancing, and the clip I sent your Instagram from like the movie, and it's like the girls learning how to twerk. They're like grabbing each other and like, this is how you pop your ass. And then like some of them are slapping each other's ass, and you're like, I don't really know if I want to watch 11-year-olds do that. Like, I don't know if I'm okay with that.
Right.
Which, and then you get pushed back, and like the one article is talking about Ted Cruz trying to figure out if it's actually illegal to show this because it's sexualizing underage girls.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have pushback from a lot of the left saying like, basically, there's nothing wrong with this. This has like artistic, ability to explain a story however they want, which I get. I definitely understand that they want to be able to tell a story of someone breaking from the bonds of their family and discovering themselves. But I don't know if provocatively
Twerking
dancing,
yeah.
and the way they kind of like film it is a little bit too much like on point. Like it's not like we're watching like Step Up or something where it's like, oh, they're supposed to be high schoolers, but they're really all in their mid-20s, and it's like, it's cool. It's like, nah, these are preteens dancing dirty. It's like, how do you hide that? How do you tell me that is kind of appropriate? I don't know.
And the dirty dancing they're doing is far dirtier than Swayze's version.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
well,
they're on stage.
I just pulled up Netflix on my smartphone, and Cuties, the film, is in fact on Netflix, number 7 in the U.S. today of popularity. And the description is 11-year-old Amy starts to rebel against her conservative family's traditions when she becomes fascinated with a free-spirited dance crew. Now that sounds innocent enough, just upon reading the description, but I guess upon further inspection, it's other 11-year-old girls who are twerking in a sexually suggestive way. And I know this is a French film, so Nick, what do you have to say about that? Can you explain that? I mean, what's the deal?
I'm disgraced by my home country. No,
But yeah, what I don't understand how something like that. I don't know. I mean, what's the general consensus about? Is it pretty much split between right and left, saying like this is disgusting, appalling, like how did this even get made, and how the hell is this on Netflix? And then the left going, just like deal with it. It's you're just
that's what they sound like always.
This is your own insecurities, so just deal with it. And like, people are free to express themselves in any way they want, no matter their age or gender or religion. You white bigot.
That's how they finish every sentence. You white bigot. Yeah, I do find it strange. It's a really difficult situation. Like me personally, I'm never going to watch it because I have no interest in that, and I definitely don't want to see any preteens twerking. I don't even want to see any preteens, just in general.
No.
So that part already turns me off of the idea. But ultimately, like also, I believe in just being as free as possible, especially when it comes to like art. If a director somehow convinced a producer to be like, hey, give me money to make this movie, and they find a way to do it, then go for it. But I'm certainly not going to watch it. Also, I've seen like just over like the last 2 days, it's really blown up. Like people have been incredibly angry about this thing. What is the hashtag Save the Children? That's been trending as well as a result of this movie, but also like it was trending before because of, I guess, like police had saved like a pretty large group of kids that were in human trafficking involved.
Yeah, like 40 in Georgia, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty substantial. So then now they're like tying the two. This movie and child trafficking are now tied together by hashtag Save the Children, which I think maybe that's going a little too far, but yeah, people have really been going all over the place with it.
Well, I think it also goes back to the whole Wayfair scandal where it was like kids were getting shipped in like packages or like cabinets and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think you can even dig a little bit deeper that maybe more people are kind of opening their eyes to it, where it's like you have stuff like, what is it, Toddlers and Tiaras or whatever kind of like little kids show where it's a beauty pageant for, toddlers. And you mean to tell me that that's not sexualizing children? Like you're dressing them up like they're supposed to be adults, and that's odd. And then even dig into where like the overall kind of atmosphere with even like pornography is going. You're seeing a lot of women that look younger than 18, portraying these roles of being teenagers or very young teenagers having sexual interactions with other people to fulfill fantasies of mostly, I'll say, men. And this is kind of getting like pumped through the whole society. So you kind of like, whether you're just watching like TLC on regular cable or you're getting on the computer late at night to have some fun, you're kind of running into this. Kind of can't hide from it.
It's the disease of liberalism, Benny.
Should have eaten more graham crackers, damn it. You wouldn't have those thoughts.
Yeah, it is. It is weird. What I don't know when you put yourself like, who the hell's watching that movie?
That's
Like
I've wondered the same
girls of
thing.
that
Oh, we
age,
know
I guess.
people. I don't think so. I
You
think
know
it's a
people.
lot of people that are our age that are watching
It's
it. They're
number
just not
seven.
gonna
It's
be
number
like,
7.
yeah, it's not us, and it's not
It's
younger
not
people.
us.
It's but it's definitely people. I
100%.
bet you, plenty of people have watched it this week. I bet you.
But probably because of the
Cool.
outrage, right? I mean, because like one
Just
person started saying this is terrible, another person's like, "What are you talking about? Let me check it out." And I feel like that effect at least is progressing this movie upwards in the trending.
So a lot of Streisand effect, kind of just pushing the numbers up. Which I
Mm.
get it. Like I honestly thought about watching it before coming on here, not like today, but this weekend when it came out to be
Mm.
like, all right, this is what's wrong with it. This is where this part got weird. Uh, but and even then over the weekend, it was still top 10 in the country, or
Right.
top most
yeah.
popular.
I think like the message was like from people who are like in support of it is saying like, I don't know, women should be free to express themselves in any way they want, from free from sexual like labeling or anything like that, but yet you're sexually exploiting them to get that message across. It's very strange to me.
Why do you think that? So you feel like the director's sexually
I
exploiting
think
it?
that yeah. Well, I think what they're saying in defense of the movie is like, you should be free as a girl to express yourself in any way you want, and like
Mm.
this is just them like showing girl power and like don't listen to your parents and like go against your traditional values and your traditional beliefs and all conservatism in general, and do whatever you want with your body at any age. And to get that message across, they're having girls join a group to twerk and like dress scantily. And I think at the same time, you are sexually exploiting young girls by
Mm.
doing that whilst trying to promote the message of sexual liberalism and freedom. And I don't know, I could be looking too deep into it, but I'm just looking at people who are coming out in defense of it. And
Yeah.
then I'm actually looking at what it appears to be on the surface. I mean, I didn't watch it. I don't plan to, but it just seems like something that would cause quite a lot of drama and chaos on the internet today, and
Yeah.
cause even a greater divide between the already huge divide that we are seeing on the political spectrum of blue and rouge.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna add. That is for sure. Definitely have the conservatives that are completely against it. You have the liberal-minded individuals that tend to be okay with it, or at least somehow rationalize it.
Right, right. But anyway, I don't know.
I mean, maybe
Benny.
we're seeing a hyper reaction from. I mean, people being cooped up for one thing, but
Yeah.
and then kind of still having this slow drip of just this is what the media is, this is what it isn't. Um,
Mhm.
but I think to go back to like the hyper reaction or the hyper kind of like slapback, I think a lot of people saw what happened with even the Netflix Epstein documentary. Yes, Netflix got on the bandwagon to make more money off of it, but I do think that it opened a lot of people's eyes to human trafficking that can go on right underneath your nose or to someone down the street.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think definitely in the spheres of Instagram that I'm in, you've definitely seen a lot of like uh, anti-pedophile kind of rhetoric. One that comes to mind is often forcibly inserting one into a wood chipper, just because they're kind of uh, basically like a stain on society.
Mm.
Or another logic is like go play. It's like playing Pokemon Go, but with real people. You just catch them and then throw them like in a wood chipper, or whatever kind of horrific end you want to have.
Yeah.
But the reality is you can go online to family watchdog sites and type in your address, and then boom, you have your neighborhood, and you can see who's there, and it's shocking. Like, I just moved a little bit over a month ago, and before we moved, I looked, and there's 2 registered sex offenders in my neighborhood now. Like, I know one committed his crime in Tennessee. I didn't pay the money with like Verify Me or whatever to actually find out what happened. But and then I look in my own neighborhood that I was living at the time, and there was a guy one house down that had a pretty high profile case of being a grown man hooking up with a 15-year-old while he was a softball coach. Like, that's kind of an unacceptable thing to then find out that that's your neighbor. Like, and now that I have a kid, it's like, geez, like, now do I have to vet everybody that I know? And it's like, yeah, I kind of do. And I think that a lot of people are coming to that realization that this is a lot wider of a issue than, we kind of been thinking about. Like, I think maybe it was just a few extra stones that needed to be unturned to really let everybody kind of see what actually is going on. Not that we didn't know that like human trafficking existed, but maybe it just kind of like sparked a little bit more of a flame to project that image out.
Yeah. Do you guys think that pedophilia is a mental illness?
I don't know. I would say, yeah, you definitely have some sort of mental issue going on. I don't know if something happened in your childhood that sort of activated something in your brain that turned on later in your life, for you to cause. I mean, it could be a combination of a lot of different things. Certainly something is off in your brain if you're doing that in a society that has clearly established that that is not the norm and that is not okay at all. And we have laws against it, and you
Yeah.
still do it. I think there's definitely something wrong with you. Like, are you born with that thing though? I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough
I
to
don't know
tease
too
out.
much
Like,
about it.
I do
Yeah.
think that I do think to Benny's point, it's really interesting to have people's kind of essentially say, hey, let's just throw these people into the wood chipper, right? Kind of somewhat comically, but also somewhat a veiled threat. And yet, we're so attentive to all these different mental illnesses, right? Like, we wouldn't say that about a schizophrenic. We wouldn't say that about a person with major depression. And of course, those individuals typically don't hurt other people, which in pedophilia you are hurting someone else. But I mean, you could make that argument for like a schizophrenic, right? A person who is thinking certain things and then they start acting on those things, and sometimes that can be violent. But do we then jump to the conclusion of, oh, we need to kill this person and we need to kill them in a really gruesome way? I just think it's real cognitive dissonance by society in general to have people look at somebody with a mental, if we were to define it as a mental health issue, a mental illness, that the solution that we come up with, maybe facetiously, is we just kill them. I think that's such a weird thing.
Well, that's the issue with someone, like in some states they have like chemical castration, and that usually pertains to men, where you're just really giving a man a really high dose of some like cocktail of drugs that makes you just not have any libido, and that's supposed to solve it.
Yeah.
But while we were talking about this, I was looking up the recidivism rate of sex offenders, and it says sexual recidivism rates range from 5% after 3 years to 24% after 15 years. So if we're saying that we're looking more at a mental issue, then I would definitely agree with that. But we do have to remember that usually this kind of thing stems from some kind of traumatic event that happens in someone's childhood that kind of perpetuates down the road, that sexual offenders tend to be someone that was sexually offended upon. And they kind of, that's their only release. Sorry, I got to take my cat out. He is going nuts right now. So I gotta step away for 2 seconds and check him out.
Walk your
Hold
cat.
on. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I'm canceling my cat.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's just like I don't know if the movie Spotlight, but it's on Netflix now. It's been on Netflix for a while. It's an Academy Award, and it was about the Spotlight team at the Herald or the Boston Globe, whatever their big newspaper is, Boston, and they covered all these different cases and instances and people come out against priests all over Boston and eventually all over the United States and the world to document like sexual abuse that was rampant throughout the Catholic Church in the priesthood. And what they found, like what you said, was, you know, many of the priests who were abusing the kids were those kids at one point before, you know, like they were raised in the Catholic Church and then they became priests, and it just became a cycle of unfortunate normality there. And it's like, with such a huge widespread issue, it's like, was it all mental, or was it directly because it was just like that was the norm and it happened to me, therefore I guess this is just what you do now? Or like, so yeah, I can definitely see in that case where it was like you're doing it because you were traumatized as a kid as well. And I don't know fully, you know, why people who are traumatized really badly as kids, especially in that way, go on to, not always, but go on to commit the same thing to someone else when they're older and they knew how it felt as a kid, yet they still do it. So it's a combo of, you know, mental weakness, vulnerability, and then just unfortunately being abused, taken advantage of in your really formative years. So it sucks. But that's it's a great movie. If you have not seen it, it really does a great job of like uncovering all of that. And it's true. So
Spotlight.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of being, I don't know if you have a story you want to share about potentially being canceled, or if that's too personal for you at the moment.
I don't think I'm ready to cross
mention
that.
Names.
Well, yeah, I think
you don't even have to mention post.
Yeah, well, I just yeah, okay, well that's fine. You can go into it a little bit. So, to make a long story short, or a short story even shorter, me and Maribel were disinvited from a birthday party based purely on some posts that I had made that were a little bit too spicy and triggered two people. And basically the host thought it would be best if we didn't attend the event because I would maybe break out into having a conversation about it. I might offend. Like, I might just come out and say, you know what? What happened in Kenosha?
Right.
And really just set them off. And, you know, like that was the premise of it. Because I started getting flack about a lot of the memes that I was posting about that. And, I mean, I wasn't even getting like pushback in a cognitive sense. It was just like, why you post this? And you're like, because I did my research and I think that this seems pretty legit. Whereas, you know, you have a lot of other people that are going off the field. I think they're, especially with all the riots, and then you want to talk about some kind of boiling point like Kenosha, or even just what happened in Portland where the Trump supporter was murdered and then the murderer was shot by the cops. I think you're seeing a lot of people get pretty heightened into this idea of like, oh man, it's about to pop off. It's about to pop off. It's not looking good. And then they're really sticking to their corner. And they might not necessarily really want to have that conversation anymore with someone that might disagree or actually want to come to the table with, different ideas. And the two individuals that I guess triggered, these are people that I've had conversations with about many different topics over the past couple months, where it seems like every week there's something new to get in an argument with someone about. But, moral of the story is we got disinvited from a party based on my beliefs. And then we were basically like, well, we don't agree with you on everything, but we're not going to hold that against you. And just because your other friends have this opinion and we don't, like, we've never put ourselves at odds with them. Like, why is this an issue now? Or, what is the underlying reason? And basically it just comes to say, people either want to actually have the conversation about it or not in the first place. And then, unfortunately let it kind of boil over and blow up in their own mind and, damage relationships because of it. And I mean, at this point it is what it is. I'm not, I don't know really how you rebuild some kind of a friendship like that. But, it's definitely kind of a shock, because you do hear about people getting canceled and you hear about people like getting fired. And I mean, thankfully it's nothing like that. We're talking about an inconvenience at best, or just kind of like a little bit of a slight. But, it's kind of shocking when it happens to you.
Yeah. It just sucks because that is when shit really hits the fan, is when there's when people just decide all of a sudden that they're right on everything and whatever you say is completely wrong, and they don't need to justify that by having a conversation, because they just know without a shadow of a doubt that in their mind they're completely correct. I don't know. I mean, I just don't understand why it's so wrong to have an opinion than someone else. And if it makes them feel a certain way, just especially if you've been friends for so long, why can't you have a conversation? Or hey, don't talk about it at all when you're around them. You don't have to do that either. I mean, it's just like people are allowed to have their opinion. Can't, like, today's culture has just been so like convenient for people who are so righteous in their beliefs that they can just be like, well, you're deleted. I can delete this person from Instagram, Facebook, or whatever. Therefore, they're deleted from my life because I live through my device, or I live through other people's opinions, reinforce my beliefs. And if I don't like what you say, it's like, you're just gone. And like, it just didn't used to be that way. You had to really work out your problems with other people that had different beliefs or opinions than you. And you don't always have to come to a conclusion that agrees. You can just be like, I agree to disagree, and then just move on. Like, I don't know. I don't know why people just got so offended by every little thing now. It's just a shame.
Yeah, for sure. In those kinds of situations where you have, like, let's say a scenario, like something that happens in the news and people have different opinions on it because maybe all the facts aren't out yet, or the facts are out and you just see it different ways. I think that warrants a discussion, that warrants some sort of trying to understand what the other person is, how the other person is seeing something. And that's true of anything. Like, we do that with really trivial things. Like, it can be something completely unattached from anything that's overly emotional, but if somebody sees something one way and another person sees something another way, they have a conversation about it, and they might even laugh about it, or they might be like, oh, I can't believe that you saw it that way. That's so strange. But the moment it becomes an emotionally charged situation, people don't want to have that conversation. They just want to immediately cut off all communication with that person and just say, well, this is a hopeless cause. I think that there's certain things. I think we should always have a conversation, no matter what. But there are certain things that are so divisive and so bad that they're an insult to essentially who you are. So let's say a person, if you're a black person, and except for, I guess, Daryl Davis would be the exception to this, but if you're a black person and you meet someone who's a white supremacist, like that's not a kind of situations after you have that discussion of like, oh, why do you believe the things that you believe? And they're just like, well, I hate you. You know, it's not exactly something that you can reconcile and be like, well, all right, let's just agree to disagree. You want to go grab lunch? Unless, of course, like I said, you're Daryl Davis, who's the anomaly, the exception to that kind of situation. But with the kind of stuff that, you know, Benny's describing, without going into too much detail with it, like if it is like a scenario and you guys just have a disagreement on the perspective, but it's not like, and there's a lot of gray in a lot of these discussions. I mean, a lot of the discussions that we've had, except for, and I will say one that was not gray, was the George Floyd situation. It felt like the entire nation, even conservatives, at the very least, just went quiet and didn't say much. But I even saw like some pretty strong, staunch conservatives that were like, yeah, that was fucked up. The police officer was wrong, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you've got different gradations of levels of reactions. But then with the later things that happened, like that man that was, was he killed at the Wendy's parking lot?
A week after,
Is that Rashad Brooks? Is that his name?
Rayshard.
Rayshard. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was killed.
And then the Breonna Taylor situation. It's just like although, frankly, the Breonna Taylor situation should be just as black and white, but that's just my opinion. But like some of these other situations where you have an altercation and all that stuff, like while I vehemently disagree with basically a lot of conservatives when it comes to that kind of stuff, at least I'm going to just shut up and listen to what they have to say. And I do think that having that conversation is important. So at the very least, so you can understand that you completely disagree with them and you violently disagree with them, like where you can't be you can't be around them anymore. But if you just listen to a small snippet, like a meme, you know, of a person talking about something and immediately jumping to the conclusion of, oh, I don't want to be associated with this person. That's not a dialogue. That's not a conversation. I mean, Kyle and I can attest to this, like talking to Benny's really intelligent and is able to like have a conversation about things and whatnot. So just cutting off communication isn't necessarily going to do anything, unless of course Benny's a racist, which as far as I know, he is not.
No.
Well, I am married to a refugee, so I got points for that. So.
Yeah, I mean, like there's definitely issues that are cut and dry. Like, you know, I'm not going to associate with a known, you know, rapist or just, no matter what they say. The thing is with him, it's like he's known these people for the better part of the decade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for them to just be like canceled out of my life, just like that. That's where it's just like, man, you're coming from, even if you disagree, it's just like you need to have a dialogue, or else the divide will continue to grow in this country, and maybe the boog will pop off. Benny, what do you have to say about that?
I'm not quite. Okay, I'll explain the boog. I'm not quite a collapsitarian like a lot of those guys are. So I get where they're coming from. Right? I mean, to be fair, a lot of the boog guys, the Boogaloo boys, are going to be. You just got demonetized, by the way, if you were ever going to get any AdSense on this channel, just for saying that word, by the way. But basically, you know, people try to test it.
It's B-U-G is what I said.
Boogaloo.
Big.
Uh, Basically, people try to sum up the Boogaloo, is if we'll say that, to being some kind of a second civil war, but it's not. It's not even really that that kind of cut and dry. You would have to look at it more in the lens of a second American Revolution as kind of like, I don't know, as a monolith of the revolution as you want to take, and then try to say this is going to be kind of a dumbed down, different version of it. But the end all be all is that you have people that are fed up with being oppressed by a government that they see as tyrannical, and finally just being pushed to the point where they don't want to take it anymore. And whether that's people disagreeing with like the National Firearms Act, or being fed up with police killing people and it being videotaped or whatever, which is why you see a lot of Boog boys out at these BLM protests, supporting them and going there armed to make sure that the cops don't like mess somebody up when there's other people around there that's also armed. Like, you're a lot less likely to, like, a cop is a lot less likely to try to pull a gun on a group of guys that are all armed and wearing body armor than they are against protesters that might not have anything. They might have sticks, or they
Have umbrellas.
Umbrellas, yeah. Pull a Hong Kong out. But basically, the whole idea is to go protect people practicing their rights and being peaceful, which is why you've seen a lot of people associated with wearing your body armor and your floral shirt, going out there and kind of being on both sides of it. I mean, we got to remember that it was just a few weeks ago that the guy Garrett Foster got shot in the middle of a BLM march because he's a white guy that has a black fiance. He's pushing her in a wheelchair. He's in the same circles that, like, I don't want to say that I'm in, but I definitely, it's like we've seen the same, post before, probably at a similar time. It's not like too hard to believe. And this guy gets shot by an Uber driver, and unfortunately, it was kind of like two guys in the right at the same time, if that makes sense. I mean, you're talking about Texas, where anybody can really carry a gun, and then you put two people that perceive the other person as a threat at the same time. It's like the guy that died came out on bottom, and that is about like the only justification you have. But I mean, you definitely see it with guys marching with BLM. You see the same thing with even just the guys up in Kenosha that were protecting the fire or the gas station. Like, they're out there to protect people's property because they want to ensure that people's at least liberty to own stuff isn't destroyed by other people. Like, I think a lot of people are saying, oh, well, it's just property, it doesn't matter, you got insurance, you can cover that. But you're now seeing insurance companies saying, oh, you're in Minneapolis, we're not going to cover your bill to rebuild. And then that business is gone. Those jobs are gone, and they're probably not going to come back. And you do that enough, and you're going to end up with a place similar to Detroit, where you've had all this industry move out. You're not having as much come in. Like, where did all these people get jobs? How did they support themselves? And then you find that they're more and more dependent on the state, and then they follow the same kind of guidelines and thoughts. So they buy into more state-run society and kind of get away from having their own personal property and liberties. So then they feel negatively against people that have stuff, and then you have a whole kind of class divide just in that kind of sense, which kind of really can set a weird kind of spiral effect. I don't know if it's like a Russian Revolution kind of spiral effect, but there's definitely the implications of that. But I mean, I don't know if I answered that. Was that a good enough example of what the book was? I think a lot of it is just to get rid of a tyrannical government in general, but I think a lot of other people want to be able to kind of like, I don't know, Mad Max it and kind of do whatever they want.
Why are there different mentalities within this sort of movement ideology? Because so many people on the left want to immediately put this group as alt-right or ultra far right conservative, like white supremacy, They want to put them in that box, and like, why is that not true?
Well, you've got to. Well, the funny thing is the majority of them are just libertarians in the first place. So you got a lot of people that want to see a smaller government, a lot of people that don't want to see foreign wars. They know people that were vets that are destroyed by what they did in their early 20s or teens. They see the national debt going up. They see their taxes being taken away from them. I don't remember if I brought it up, but even someone like me, like I lose out on about a quarter of my wages, if not a third of my wages, every single time I get paid. Like I worked for that money. Do I get it back? So it kind of influences that kind of thought process. A lot of stuff with like what I guess the ideas of like people being able to own stuff. Should the National Firearms Act be repealed? Like, should everybody be able to go out and mail order a fully automatic rifle? Like, I mean, you'll have extreme people that think that that's completely doable. You do you. I'm not going to get your way. Which to each their own, and that kind of idea. I think that you can't just expect people to be like what in the 1920s using a Sears catalog to buy a BAR out of it and saying this is okay. But you do see a lot of different kind of infighting. But to be honest, with as much research and as much like time I've spent looking at information with it, the number one thing that I really do come across is that it is very much anti like racism. Like some of the first things that you'll see on most of these pages is just like racism isn't cash money. We don't want to hear about you hating on Jews. We don't want to hear you about hating on black people or whatever. It doesn't matter. Like that is usually a headline of saying we are not about this. And I think a lot of people in any kind of a liberty movement have that mentality of like they want everybody to be as free and as prosper as much as possible. They just might not necessarily, I guess, feel like the government should be bankrolling it. But I guess that's a separate issue. I mean, even talking about libertarianism, that's its own kind of like you want to talk about some infighting there. It's everybody calling everybody else not a true libertarian because they believe one way or they feel like, oh, you support the cops too much. Clearly, you're a statist. Like you're a bootlicker. Get out of here. It's like you can't find a true libertarian out there to save your life. But I think
even within groups there are huge divisions, not just like blue or red. It's like the nuance within those sections can have a lot of divide.
Definitely, and I would say that's a more or less a regional thing. But I think it comes down to if you want to see a visual kind of like of what they're kind of up against is you see a lot of confrontations between Boot Boys and the 3%ers, which I don't know if you know who the 3%ers are. They're the people that identify with the 3% of the United States population, or the colonialists, the 3% of the population that took up arms to fight against the English, and that's why they call themselves 3%ers or threepers. And you see them as a like, I don't know how no one looks at like people's posts, but if you look at like 3%er posts, you're looking at basically like Trump 2020, like oh god, like go to wall kind of stuff. Like, but then you even see that kind of thing carry over into the rallies where it's like now you're having all these protests where you'll have like Boog Boys out there, and then you'll have Threepers out there, and then you'll have like the NAFC out there, the not fucking around crew, I don't want to say they're black supremacist group, but they're armed black people that want to be out there exercising their rights to organize and to have their own kind of parade and their own functions out in public and kind of be their own entity. That's fine. They're not hurting me. If they're doing that, I mean, they're hurting themselves because they're having accidental discharges of rounds into their own crowds and people are going to hospitals during their events, but they're not bothering me. But you are seeing a lot of these confrontations between these different groups, and especially between like the Boogaloo Boys and then these 3%ers, because the Boogaloo Boys are not conservatives. I mean, I guess you might have some conservative values, whereas like you just want to be left alone and homestead and have your chickens, and get married and have kids. And like, is that your conservatism? Like, I don't know. Like, do we want to label that as that, or is that just what you want to do in your life? Whereas like, the 3%ers are like, I want, more police. I want to increase the, cost of police. I want these laws to be passed. I want these people not to be able to do this kind of stuff. I want the government to take control of this issue and basically do my will against other people. And I think that you see the Boogaloo the Boogaloo boys standing against that kind of mentality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's just so hard to get a grasp on the ideologies of all these different groups, and I don't know, a true picture, I mean, of everything. And that's why I'm glad that you're able to explain a little bit more, because I think a lot of people, who mainstream media look at that group and they're like, oh, racist white guys with guns and, Trumpers, whatever. But I don't know. Do you guys think that social media has played and is continuing to play a bigger role in the polarization between just people, social groups? Because now you can form all your opinions within the comfort of your own home by just your smartphone, instead of, actually going out and forming your opinion based on the experiences you make in the real world. I don't know if that is going to cause issues going forward that we maybe can't even predict the level of severity. But I mean, there could be positives too, but I don't know.
Oh, I definitely think that social media has played probably the biggest role of all. Just because, I mean, kind of ties into our previous conversation of people not wanting to have discussions. So they end up, and it's really easy to delete a friend, right, on like Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And then and then just by deleting that person without having that conversation we were talking about earlier, then that leads you to concentrate your beliefs into the people that you surround yourself with. So you're getting this echo chamber. You're essentially creating an echo chamber by deleting people that you disagree with without having some sort of conversation. Now that goes both ways, though. Obviously, the other party has to be receptive to having a conversation. But I think, and I've certainly met people that even when I don't say anything and I just listen to them, just the fact that I'm not agreeing with them vehemently, then that immediately comes off as if I'm not being supportive, and then they want to cancel me as well. So
you're not an ally.
No, I'm not an ally. Exactly. Yeah, and that's really heartbreaking for some people because I'm measured and I take my time and whatnot. And there are other people like that, and they want to have those conversations. So, yeah, I definitely think social media plays probably the biggest role, even ahead of like the traditional media that you would think of.
Oh yeah, big time, way bigger. And because now, I mean, it's just trial by social media. If you've been accused of something on Twitter or Instagram, Crystalia, Brian Callen, everybody doesn't want to touch you. This isn't even the court of law. This is just the court of Twitter has decided that you're toxic and everybody who works with you needs to get out now. Yeah. And or we'll come after you as well. Not legally. I mean, you can keep all your money and not have to go to court or face anything because there's no actual evidence that you did anything. But the fact that someone just came out randomly and said that you did years ago, that means that we're going to just drop you from everything you've ever done, and you're just toast. And I think that's why a lot of people, especially comedians like Joe Rogan, are leaving California. I mean, that's not the only reason, but especially in like LA, where it's like that's the whole world is Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and all that stuff, and the only people who matter are the people on those platforms. And if that's your base, that's who you have to appeal to. And I think now people are being like, I don't want to have to live and die by some random person's accusations of what I did, 2 decades ago, just coming out of nowhere. And like everybody in Hollywood being like, I believe her, even though I've never met her and I've worked with you for 25 years as your management company. Like, you're gone now. See you later. Good luck ever getting work here again. And that's like the thing that's the thing that was so crazy to me this year was, Chris D'Elia and then Brian Callen, like 2 big comedians. Like, I'm not the biggest fans of their comedy. Like, I think Chris D'Elia just is trash as a comedian, but
I agree.
Younger women like him, and I guess he likes younger women too, but but he was hilarious on podcasts that I listened to. And as soon as that stuff about him from women on Twitter, I'm not saying that they're wrong or unjustified by doing what they did, but as soon as that happened, it was like, they're telling the truth. He's wrong. Delete every single podcast he's done. Like, his best friends just straight up deleted everything, every episode having to do with him, which, by the way, were their biggest ever episodes.
Ooh.
And they're like, we never knew the guy, basically. And then it happened to Brian Callen. And, he's got that podcast called The Fighter and the Kid. I don't know if you guys have heard of that podcast.
No, I haven't listened to it.
Well, it's a huge, huge podcast. It was Brian Callen, who's a comedian, and then Brendan, who was a former MMA fighter.
Yeah, I don't like him.
And they just have good chemistry. And they had a really successful, like, top 50 podcast. And as soon as that came out, they took his name off the title or the description. Brian Callen, he's just not involved anymore. The management company that works with Brendan Schaub was like, you can't do anything else with him again, even though he was the guy that, like, basically gave you a career after fighting when you didn't know what you were going to do with your life. So now it's all The Fighter and the Kid, but he just has on different people every episode, and it's basically tanked because people are like, where the hell's Brian? Like, and then they tried to do like a different podcast, but they wouldn't let Brendan do anything with Brian. So now Brian's going to move to Texas probably with Joe.
Everybody just moves to Texas. Well, with Chris, I mean, from what I understand, he ended up proving his innocence, right? That he showed messages.
Oh, he had emails and
everything, that he was right. Like, these people had doctored text messages and stuff, and messages in general, emails and whatnot. And that, I mean, at least that was some of his accusations. Obviously, I haven't done like a deep dive into this, but that's what I ended up reading and hearing from another source as well.
And he never made any physical contact with anyone that was under legal age of wherever he was. And they doctored their ages and like the dates of the thing. And
and he even asked, I think,
what?
I remember he said something like they were having this conversation. He was having this conversation with this younger girl who was, I think, underage, and he was like, "How old are you?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm 21, or I'm going to be 21, or something like that." And then he asked her again because he didn't believe her. He like pressed the issue, and then finally, I think she ended up saying her age, and he just ghosted her. Like the moment he found out her actual
and then she's
age.
like, "Well, he reached out to me, so he's a pedophile."
Yep. And the fact that he ghosted her was one of the reasons why she got upset, or people got upset.
Oh yeah.
Like, I that's like the best possible response.
It's all women who didn't get with Chris D'Elia. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's they would have gotten their way. Like, you wouldn't have heard a peep out of him. Like Chris D'Elia is probably he's one of the richest comedians of today. I mean, not anymore,
Jeez.
but he was at the time. And he would just have, you know, trucks of women that would come to his show at wherever it was, just and swamped by women. And it's just like, on one hand, you're like, dude, why are you like being weird and creepy on Messenger with people who are, you know, pretty young? Like, I'm not saying like it's a cool thing that he's doing, but like, why wouldn't you just be like after a show, and if you connect with somebody and just like go out for a drink after the show or something like that, instead of being like, I'm going to go back to the hotel and like creep on people who liked my posts, you know, that are hot and like pretty young.
I feel like people just
I don't know. I mean, everybody's got their weird thing, I guess.
For sure, yeah. Yeah.
It's just
but as long as they're not
know.
underage, that's the thing, right? That's what it ultimately got canceled for, right? The underage. Like, I understand, you know, the younger thing, but I mean, if they're of legal age, like, and two consenting adults, I see zero issue with it. It like you, it drives me crazy though that people have accusations and then they equate accusations to immediately having proof. People just don't wait around to actually have proof, and
it's like
so
I'm never
bad.
ever gonna use Twitter as like you know, my proof for anything.
Yeah.
Like Chris D'Elia has credibility because he's like a famous, proven comedian of over a decade in Hollywood, you know, and then you're just gonna believe this random person who clearly doctored the emails. And I don't know, it's just very bizarre how people side so quickly with, you know, the victim mentality without proof. I mean, if there's proof, of course.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
yeah, and it's just like same thing happened to Louis, you know.
Yeah, this weird side gig. I'm just gonna touch myself on here in the rib with you. Don't mind me.
Like, but every time before he goes, "Can I do this?" And they were like, "Yeah." He said every single occasion he asked before he did it, and they said, "Yes, you can do that." And sometimes they said no, and he wouldn't do it. But the thing is they were like, you know, he's a comedian of this stature, like he's at the pinnacle, right? And then the people he's doing it to are like up and coming comedians that he's, you know, having open for him. So they felt like if I say no, then he's not going to bring me back on the road, or he's not going to bring me, you know, to open a show for him.
Right.
Which I get that too,
yeah,
as well.
Sense.
He just came out with a new stand-up. Maybe I've talked about it already, but on his website he released, a new stand-up.
Yeah.
It's outrageous, like, because he talks about it.
Yeah.
And he's like everybody knows. He's like, everybody knows my thing. Like, do you realize like what that feels like to know like that? He's like, Obama knows my thing. He's like, it sucks. But yeah, he's like, even if you ask and they say yes, don't do it. That's
right.
what I've basically. So yeah, it's interesting times, and I'm not defending any of these people, but I just think it's weird that people are so quick to just be like, he's done, screw him, you know, based on little to no evidence.
Yeah. No, that's the point. That's the only point that we're arguing is the evidence. There has to be evidence. Like, you just say stuff and then for a person's entire career that they worked, 20 years on, to just go down the tube. And the thing is,
Crumbled.
like, if you end up finding out that person lied about it, what happens? What happens to this person? Do they get their career back? No, they have to work their way back up. It's not like the sponsors are like, our bad. You know what? Our bad.
Yeah, no one's
come on
gonna
aboard
admit they're
again.
wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody.
No one ever
They're gonna,
admits that they're wrong.
the people that were against him when all that came out, they will never be like, we jumped the gun here, we're wrong. They're just going to be like, well, it's white privilege that made him, escape these accusations.
Come up with something.
And like, yeah, it was still wrong that he did this. Like, who made you the, arbiter of what's right and wrong?
Yeah.
You little bitch.
Only the High Council of Halo can make you an arbiter.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man.
All right, gentlemen, I have to unfortunately go. But thanks for coming on the podcast, Benny, for the third time.
It's always a pleasure.
Still didn't talk about the private prison systems, though.
I know. I actually wanted to ask you more about the Boog as well. So if you want to go on for a fourth time, and we'll focus the discussion on those two things, I would really like to hear
your
opinion.
Boog, like if I put the Boog in the description, I'll get deplatformed or.
It doesn't.
Really?
It doesn't even matter to us because we don't even have monetization.
They're so small, yeah.
Yeah, we need 1,000 subscribers, and we need. So if you're listening to the podcast, go ahead and join, subscribe,
click the
like,
subscribe button.
Share, and then get us canceled.
But if you type that in on YouTube, it's like it won't pull up anything, or it pulls up stuff. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, it will.
I don't know what comes up anymore. But I mean,
like if you have it in the title.
If you have it in the title. Google and definitely Facebook. I mean, I've been in multiple groups that have, one day you're in the group and you're seeing posts. The next day you log on and you're like, where'd that group go? Oh, gone. Yeah, and then you end up with one that's like the 271st Wyona's backyard barbecue and Chesapeake Bay crab hunting event, and you're like, I know what that one is. That's it. I'll apply to that one. That's what it's turned into. It started from Boogaloo, and then you have Big Igloo, Big Luau, and then it's just like turned into, just come up with a crazy concoction of words, and you can find it. Just think outside the box.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd love to come back on and talk about that sometime. That'd be interesting. Maybe we can have I don't know. We can go over the private prison system. Ooh, definitely. Here's a good one. I want to see this one rattle you. Get rid of anti-discrimination laws.
Oh, okay. That would rattle me. You're right. I would definitely like to hear that as well.
He's shocked to the core on that one.
Yeah, you might. But anywho, love to. Let me know whenever. Always a pleasure to come on and talk to you guys. So thanks for having me.
Sure. We'll see you next week, Benny.
Hey, and also, give a quick shout out to your new podcast. Is that happening or is that not happening?
That is happening. So we will be recording the first episode this week. We had a similar, sort of a dry run this past weekend. But it's going to be called Date Night Download. So it's me and my wife, Merva, kind of like having our own date night since we don't go out. We have a 6-month-old. 6-month-old.
6-month-year-old, man.
6-month-year-old. So we have a 6-month-old and COVID. So we haven't been on a date since the day before she went in labor, which was March 9th. So this is going to turn into our date night, which is going over stuff and having a discussion. So
that's a cool.
We're going to enjoy some wines and kind of chill out and make it into kind of our own vibe.
I know a wine expert I can hook you up with. Who knows a whole lot about wine.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What's his name?
I'll tell you later. I've had some wines with him. He's good though. Let me tell you.
Okay. Yeah, let me know. Let me know.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, well, till next time then.
We'll see you later.